Bista highlighted, is we continue to grow in our impact as measured by different high quality sources. We've always been 100% open access, which means we're free for both authors as well as for people to read our research. There is no cost for anyone ever, and that is because of you. Your volunteer work, if you're a reviewer for us, an editor for us, a copy editor for us, a typesetter for us, it's because of your work. That is what makes it free. And our Scopus site score is continues to increase. It's 1.8, which is quite good for our field. We are listed in the Web of Science, which is very important for many authors around the world. It's one of the most common questions I get is whether we're listed. We are, and we're near the Q1 category. We're just a couple points shy of being a Q1 journal, quarter one journal. And then as Dr. Bista mentioned, we're currently based on the H5 median index, we're a top 10 journal under Google Scholar. You can see that yourself on our website. So we're excited about that, but we're more excited that we really diversified who is publishing in our journal. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, although we created a very flexible review policy, I'm proud to share with you that our editorial team, despite all the challenges that they've personally experienced, we were still able to make a decision, initial decision, on 94% of our manuscripts within what we try to do for 90 days. We know it's very important for authors who need to publish to get a decision in a timely way. And I'm really proud of all the editorial board members who are here that have helped make that possible, even during this global pandemic. We have an amazing collection of special collections on topics. And then we have regional collections, because you can again see that we're really trying to highlight the importance of regional knowledge, contextual knowledge, and local knowledge, particularly in areas that are less researched as it relates to international students. You can see that we're already surpassing our total page view count from last year so far here in August, and we're nearing what will likely be a 1 million page view year. Our editorial team, who many of you are here today, are a part of that, are joining us. We're going to highlight the book series in just a minute and some of the titles that we're doing in this series for Routledge. Some of these titles that are already in the pipeline include Student Mobilities from the Global South, looking at issues of inequities in higher education, looking at community colleges issues, seeing the impacts of COVID-19, seeing things from the perspective of international students, looking at international students in the Middle East. So we've really focused on understudied aspects of the field, and we have some amazing editors, many of whom are here tonight, that are leading these book projects and providing opportunities for authors around the world. We have some cool global partnerships that are in the pipeline as well, including a new partnership with HETL, Higher Education for Teaching and Learning, as well as many other organizations around the world. And you're going to hear some exciting partnerships and developments that we're going to have in the coming weeks related to those partnerships. One of the things the journal has always been important for us is we try to create mentor pathways. We're not trying to become an elitist journal. We're trying to become a gateway and an opportunity for students. And the best kind of email that I get is from an author that says, "This is my first published paper. You gave me an opportunity. You worked with me to be able to publish this paper." And we've really taken a mentorship approach to our review process, and we want to create mentor pathways. One of the ways we've been doing that is we recognize the hard work of our reviewers. And we have acknowledged our Editor's Choice recipients in 15 different countries around the world, the reviewers that are doing great work to expand the journal's impact there, as well as other people that are providing timely reviews. Many of you probably received some of these awards who've joined us here today. And we're excited to be able to acknowledge that work, because it's very important for folks' promotion and tenure packages to do that. We have a series of webinars that we've done with our home, which is at the Comparative and International Education Study Abroad SIG. And then we worked on developing a sustainable funding model. None of the things that you see happen for free. They happen as a result of your hard work, your volunteer work, our work of our partners, and then generous donations from different organizations as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bista to highlight some things related to funding and support.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glass. Over the years, yes, we were so fortunate to collaborate with many of the associations and organizations. So definitely, these are some of our publications. We have the network called Open Journals in Education. So these are the professional journals in the field. And you can see on the top, some of the universities, they are there to support the publication of these journals. They are the research universities, in the East Coast, West Coast, across the country, and some of them are outside the country as well. Um, yes, and then special thanks goes to the World Dominion University, Chris Glass and his entire team there for the financial support for the this journal. And this is because of them we were able to make it open access and no cost to any of our authors or the vendors. So this is amazing. Also, we like to take a minute to acknowledge our wonderful, team of the associate editors. They have years of experience and have done a wonderful job working, many manuscript every year, every semester. So that's great. And also, we like to acknowledge the hard work of our assistant editor. Assistant editors also brings, years of experience in the field, and many of them are former student, former international student, or currently working as a professor, postdoc. This is so great. And also we have a list of the entire copy editors over the years. They received the trainings under the leadership of the senior copy editor, Joy Bank Craft. So it is great that they are looking into the manuscript before we accept, we consider them for publication. Thank you, copy editors. And this is my headquarter team, including Dr. Glass and our editorial staff from Old Dominion and Morgan. And again, a special thanks goes to Joy Bancroft and her team for the for the copy editing, and then also Dr. Glass. Thank you. And also, we'd like to congratulate Dr. Chris Glass, and he is taking another big, I would say, giant role as an editor over the last 10 years, entire decade. He's gone through the hard work, and already Dr. Glass working so hard, and many of you are familiar working with him. So congratulations to Dr. Glass. Thank you, Dr. Glass. Yes, and back to you, Dr. Glass.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Krishna. I appreciate that. And thank you, all of you who've joined us here tonight. We have people that are still joining us. One of the things I want to share with everybody is feel free to use the chat box during this. We're going to be monitoring that. Anybody who's not talking will be monitoring that. And we encourage you to have a conversation. Sometimes that can be the most interesting part of participating in a webinar like this, in a meeting like this. So feel free to do that. Krishna, myself, and others are going to be monitoring it, and you're feel free to have conversations as you listen to our authors. And now we have a chance for our main event tonight, and a chance to interact with some of the authors that have written some of the latest books in the field. And we're going to introduce each author and give them a few minutes to present on their book and share about that. And then we're going to have, at the end of all the authors' presentation, we'll have a chance for you to ask some questions. And so feel free to type those in the chat box. We'll be monitoring what those questions are, but also feel free to have conversations about what you're hearing different authors saying, and participate in what other people are asking as well. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our authors here tonight. Dr. Darla K. Deerdorf, Dr. Yinging Ma, Helen Forbes Mewett, Dr. Yinging Ma, Dr. Helen Forbes Mewett, Dr. Anthony C. Ogden, Dr. Lee Tran, Dr. Leanne Pham, and then Dr. Rosalind Latner Rabi as well. They'll be presenting in this order. And so we're going to have first Dr. Deerdorf present, please.
To be here, and congratulations on the 10th anniversary. Congratulations to Dr. Glass. And thanks so much for the opportunity to share about this recent publication. This is a result of a project I have been working on with the United Nations, with UNESCO, for the last couple of years. And we actually launched this manual in Paris in December. And I'm pleased to report that it is open access in 5 different languages, possibly soon to be maybe up to 7 different languages. So we're really excited about that. And this is the result of an intercultural methodology that we have piloted successfully in all 5 UNESCO regions around the world. And you can read kind of case studies, so to speak, from those 5 case studies in the manual. But I would encourage all of you, particularly your practitioners, UNESCO wants this methodology to be used widely And it's a wonderful way to not only help develop and practice intercultural competence in very impactful and powerful ways, but it's also a great way to bridge divides and to bring others together. While it was initially meant to be a face-to-face methodology, and when we piloted it around the world, it was indeed face-to-face. We piloted it in Bangkok, Thailand, in Harare, Zimbabwe, in San Jose, Costa Rica, in Tunis, Tunisia, and Vienna, Austria. And in addition, I've used it in many other contexts around the world, including with over 200 teachers in Beijing. And I also use it in the classes I teach. But now, because of COVID, I am pleased to report that UNESCO has been piloting it online quite successfully. In fact, just trained UN staff in Brazil just last week using this intercultural methodology, which is called story circles. And it uses a methodology that's been around for as long as humans have been around, and that is in sharing our own personal experiences. And it's through the process that often comes to us from indigenous traditions, which is the circle process. Some of you may be familiar with that. And so it's really trying to move away from what is often dominated from the global north to really involving different ways of being able to practice and develop intercultural competence. So I'm very happy to share with any of you more about it. Again, it is open access, so you can download it. It's in 5 different languages, including French and Arabic and Spanish. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know. If you use this methodology, I would love to know so we can kind of hear about your experience with it. And in addition, if you're specifically interested in intercultural global competence, I would love to hear from you, and also to get you involved in a new exciting organization, which is a partner to the STAR Network, called the World Council on Intercultural and Global Competence. So for anyone who's interested in this topic in particular, I'd love to hear from you. I'm also happy to answer any questions around this methodology. Last thing I'd mention is that UNESCO was actually looking for an intercultural methodology that could be used with any group of people anywhere in the world using little to no resources, and that could be facilitated by someone who's not formally trained in intercultural communication. And this particular methodology ticks all those boxes. So again, happy to have you use it and would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share about this.
Great. Thank you so much. We do have, I know you have another commitment you need to get to. So typically we do questions at the end, everyone. But on this one, there are a couple questions I'd like you to have a chance to respond to. Someone asked, Cindy and Rose Wedwood was asking, how do you teach intercultural competency in online formats? I think there's a lot of interest in that. It's probably a long answer, but what is something you would say to the people who've joined us tonight about what you're learning about that?
Sure. So I really think I would point you to this manual and to this methodology. It's really amazing how well it works, both face to face in person as well as online. It's very detailed on how to set it up. It's a very structured process through this methodology, but it's also very adaptable. And online, we put those small groups into breakout rooms. And so they're able to really connect very deeply and very meaningfully, surprisingly, with about 5 or 6 other colleagues in the breakouts. And they come out of it. In fact, one person in Brazil said that it was the most amazing experience she's had in the entire time she's been in quarantine. So it's really, really impactful, including online. The important thing is it's not just about the head knowledge, but it's also important to connect through the heart. And that's what this methodology does.
I think we have time for one more question. And some people in the chat box are asking if we'll save the chat box. We actually will save. We're happy to share it out with everybody here. And you can save it yourself if you click on the 3 little dots there and save that. But the other question was more kind of a conceptual question, which is there is talk about intercultural competence and cross-cultural competence. How do you think about those 2 terms and how they relate?
So there are actually 30 different terms or more, 30 plus terms used to describe this concept. It depends on your context and on your discipline. UNESCO tends to use, and United Nations uses the term intercultural competencies. I've also worked with the OECD. I was one of the 4 experts involved in the Global Competence PISA that will be announced later this fall. And OECD uses global competence. So it really, the terms vary. What's important to say is, what do we mean by this, and what frameworks are being used and how we define it. And a lot of it just depends on the context and on the discipline. And this particular manual is based on the framework from my own research around intercultural competence. And so the outcomes that we desire through this intercultural methodology of story circles is really derived from that particular framework. But happy to talk with anybody more about that further later. And I hope I can stick around. I just wasn't sure how long I can be here. So thanks for the opportunity to answer questions now.
Great. Well, I encourage you to read the chat box. There's a lot of love and respect for your work being expressed in the chat box. And our book review editor, Lisa, did talk about that we will have a forthcoming review of your book coming out in a next issue of the journal as well.
Right. One last thing I'd like to say is we're actually taking some of the prompts that we used in the Story Circles manual. And those are the ones that we're asking international students to respond on for the book in your all series on looking at international student journeys. And so we're really, my colleague in Australia, Lily Aris-Ratnam-Smith, and I are very excited about that. Those will be due in December. The call is out there, and we can certainly send it to you if you know international students, both present and past, who would be interested in submitting an essay for that. And that's a way to kind of continue this methodology in yet another format.
Wonderful to hear. We're going to go ahead and move to our next author now. Dr. Ma, would you like to present about your book, Ambitious and Anxious?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Glass, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bista. It's a very inspiring journey for you and for us to be part of it. And I really appreciate your courage and independent work and to get us this far for this journal. I'm very happy to share with you about my new book, Ambitious and Anxious, How Chinese College Students Succeed and Struggle in American Higher Education. This year, 2020, is probably very unprecedented for Chinese students. And for my lifetime, I have not really imagined a lot of things could happen to them. But I started the research of this book way back in the year of 2012. So that was 8 years ago. So the research was conducted from 2012 to 2018, before this pandemic, before I can well anticipate what would happen. But what I want to do is really back then, 2012, as a college professor at Syracuse, I started to notice a growing wave of Chinese international students at undergraduate level. So for graduate students that have been here for decades, and for undergraduate, starting from 2012 and then moving on in 2014, starting to overtake graduate students, becoming the majority of Chinese international students population. And I want to move beyond the media headlines. It's pretty unidimensional in terms of how privileged they are, how wealthy they are. And my research really take me to uncover a more of a diverse from both family background and educational background in terms of how many years they have spent in China or Chinese schooling, and how they are getting prepared, what kind of educational pathways they travel from China to the United States. And as the title of the book has indicated, then looking ahead, their future career planning. So in the end, I also offer some kinds of policy implications for American higher education, from the admissions to faculty support, to career services, and also to student affairs in terms of social integration. So I well recognize that I got many inquiries from the media, from the journalists, and their questions are all centered on this year. Various kinds of policies targeting Chinese students and the future enrollment. I think some of the themes in the book is going to be enduring, and such as social integration, such as college major choices, such as the differences between Chinese education system and American education system, and how that differences really set up a very, very strong barriers for their academic and social studies here. So, and how, you know, American higher education should be aware of those differences so that we can provide a better support or education for our students. And I'll stop here, and I very much look forward to your questions. And thank you again for the opportunity to share my work with you.
Great, thank you so much. We'll ask questions all at the end. So if you do have a question for Dr. Ma, please go ahead and enter that in the chat box, and we'll have a chance for all of our panelists to kind of talk as a collective. And so feel free, as you listen to all the panelists, to ask a question that they all can respond to, advice about their work. I know, again, you're getting a lot of love in the chat in terms of your influence of your work, and Dr. Dai has been using your work in a book he's doing on Chinese students in Australia, and there's lots of great connections. Hopefully the people who've joined us here today are seeing people in the chat that they can make connections with as well. And so feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will pose them to all of our authors at the end. Next, we have Dr. Tran. Who's joining us very early in Australia, I must add. So it's very, very impressive.
Hello, everyone.
Just for that. I don't.
Yes. Yeah, no, we started at 8:30 in the morning, but it's for the night now, so it's right time for me to start my day. So hello, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Bister and Dr. Glass, for the opportunity for me to share our book. And first of all, I'd like to express my congratulations to you and the team for the wonderful achievement over the past decade, and it's really amazing providing the access effort and our international students as well as author to access high quality research and work in the field. And yeah, back to our book. The focus is about Vietnam, and the title is Student Experiences of Teaching and Learning Reforms in Vietnamese Higher Education. I co-author with Dr. Nghĩa Trân from Australian National University. So we have seen quite a few books on higher education reforms in Vietnam. However, the majority of the work underpinning those books are from the points of views and voices of the key stakeholders, including teachers, university leaders, policymakers, and leaders in higher education. So we think that students are key actors in higher education, and the various reforms in higher education in Vietnam have had significant impact on their learning experiences and achievement over the past 30 years. So with that motivation that we see that, however, their voices are the least heard in terms of designing reforms, as well as speaking back about the impact of reform. So we are motivated to listen to their voices, and we are motivated to conduct that research. And we surveyed 4,300 students across more than 20 universities in Vietnam, in the North, South, and Central Vietnam. And we also interviewed with students. So the book is basically capture the voices and experiences of students in reforming higher education in Vietnam. And the key themes that we look at are the learning and teaching environment, how students experience the teaching and learning environment under the impact of higher education reform. We look at student support and first year transition. It is an area that is not paid a lot of attention in Vietnam, the transition from high school to university. And we look at the transition to student-centered teaching. We also look at the use of credit-based curricula, so the move from traditional teaching year to the credit-based curricula, and the use of information and communication technology. Another important topic that we look at is internationalization of the curriculum at home within the context of Vietnam, especially the adaptation of the advanced program that was imported from high-ranking university in the US, UK, and Australia into the local and political context of Vietnam with the Communist Committee that governed the university. We look at the implementation as well as the tension around the implementation of the imported curriculum from the US, UK, and Australia into the Vietnamese context. We also look at the assessment and feedback. And we have a chapter that look at employability and work placement. And also we look at the role of informal learning via extracurricular activities, especially via activities that are concerned with the youth clubs, the communist youth club within university and that impact on student learning. And finally, we look at student perception of the values of university education. And I have to say that this is a wonderful opportunity for me to look back at the various policies underlining higher education in Vietnam. And I'm quite impressed by the way that all the policy have been made published via an online library. The policy that back from the ending of the Vietnam War in '75. So if any of you are interested in those policies, and it make available online very easy to access. So I'm going to have a tweet about that to share the link to you all in Vietnamese though. So you will need to translate. But that with that scope of research, clearly we come up with a variety of findings and recommendations, and also put forward a model to reconceptualize the reform in teaching and learning in Vietnam. But perhaps the notes that I'd like to end with by introducing these books is what impressed me and what unique about Vietnam higher education policy is the core principle that underpins higher education motivation and higher education orientation is the ideologies about national independence and the defense of fatherland that appear consistently over dozens of policy documents, and that make Vietnam quite unique as compared to policy concerning higher education reform in other countries. And we also see that, you know, clearly for other countries, for student and higher education stakeholder working in the field, national independence is like, you know, taken for granted like water or air. But because of the historical trajectory of Vietnam, those policies have been framed about national independence and defense of fatherland, and it's very interesting for to look at how that impact on student experiences and the way that they engage with the youth club within the university context. So with that, I'd love to end the introduction of our book. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for the excellent presentation of your book. Lots of questions in the chat related to how all the authors went about their research, what they think about some of the current trends as it relates to online education and virtual mobility, and some of those questions. So our authors can be thinking about that and look at some of the questions in the chat box, and we'll address these all at the end. Next up is Dr. Ogden, who will be presenting on the new book by a few different authors. He'll be representing his team called Education Abroad, Bridging Scholarship and Practice. Dr. Ogden?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Glass and Dr. Bista, for having me here tonight. I must say I'm having a hard time even paying attention because on my other screen here, I'm busy buying these books and downloading them and so forth. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on copies of these. I haven't found yours yet, Dr. Chan, but hopefully very soon I'll be able to get a copy of that tonight as well. It's really terrific to be with everyone today. I'll be very brief. I have spent all of my career in international higher education as a practitioner. Even though my doctorate and so forth is in international higher education, I've been working pretty much as a practitioner in the administration of international higher ed here in the United States. However, over the past several years, I've noticed that many of my colleagues, it's actually more the norm than it isn't, where we often turn to our own experience or anecdote and evidence to make our decisions. And so it's been a sort of a personal journey of my own to encourage more of my professional colleagues to look at the research and the scholarship that has become so much more sophisticated and complex in the past 15 to 20 years, especially in the United States, with regard to how we engage our practice in a day-to-day way. So a few years ago, my colleagues and I, we got together, and some of the contributing authors to this book are here with us this evening. And this is a book where we called forward this idea of the scholar practitioner of international higher education. And since then, I've started considering myself more of a scholar practitioner, where I believe that the research should inform our practice, and in turn, our practice should help guide and shape the scope of the research. So in fact, it's a symbiotic relation in which, in part, the scholar practitioner can help nurture. And so with that in mind, a couple of years ago, I got together with my co-editor of this book, again, Dr. Bernhard Streich, Form Practice. And so each chapter is written